Hey everybody, welcome to BrickVault. Today we are reviewing a monster truck slash race car that also flies, designed by my nephew. Interesting note here, you got the wings on the sides, and there's jets here, but not jets here. Jets here, but there aren't any jets right here. You understand? Okay. All right. Today we are reviewing a couple of TIE Barons from the designer Ace Mox. Major Elrik Vonreg's red TIE Baron is seen only in the short-lived Resistance show, but it made big impressions with fans of the physical universe. The slowly curving wings feel subtly advanced, like it's part of a more technically advanced production line compared to the sharp angular lines of the Imperial models, and aside from a few other small changes, it still remains very recognizable as an Interceptor. The very slightly curved wings feel like a natural evolution to the design. Just by looks, it feels faster than its predecessor, and in my opinion, it's one of the most successful vehicle adaptations from the sequel trilogy. And it's essentially just not even in the sequel trilogy. At the end of the day, you know it's an Interceptor, and it just feels better than the older one. And before I jump into the nitty-gritty details of these Lego builds here, and there's actually a third one of a slightly different color combination, let me just say that you can get the building instructions at BrickVault.toys. With an instructions purchase comes a PDF guide for the build and a digital parts list for ordering all the pieces you need online. Our models are hand tested for durability. The instructions are tested to make sure the building steps can be properly followed. We actually now have a new dedicated instructions tester on the BrickVault team, and the parts for each model are chosen with availability in mind, so you can actually find the pieces when you want to build them. Buying from us also directly supports the talented designers that we work with, and not all places online actually do that. We really like to support the people that make the models. Ace Mox has some great TIE builds under his belt already, like the TIE Whisper and TIE Silencer. Check us out at BrickVault.toys, linked in the description. And now let's actually get into the models here. I remember when Ace first sent an email with some rendered images of, I believe, Vonreg's TIE, and I said, that looks great. But how strong is it really? In my mind, the curve just looked too subtle for it to have like any real strength or integrity. But after seeing the physical testing on his side and building them out on our side, I think in the case of detail versus strength, we really got to have our cake and eat it this time around. The designer really put the wedge into wedge plate, because when putting the wings together, there's just enough pressure on the outside and inside of the wings with those studded on wedge plates that these slight angles are all locked in place with some really satisfying strength. In order for the red strip along the outer edges of the wings to line up with the slightly angled main segments of the wing, you can see that the plates and tiles that make up the border were intentionally connected with the 1x2 round plate at the bottom layer, and then two half round 1x1 tiles on the top layer. This allows for the red border to bend and curve in tandem with the rest of the wing. The idea is simple and the execution is quite elegant. You can rest it on the ground, even slide it around a bit, and I really don't feel like I'm being too ginger with the handling at all. The wings really don't feel like something you need to dance around when picking up the build. It's just a great function, and frankly, everything else after this feels like icing on the cake. Angled wedge plates make up the front of the arms of the TIE. They lead into the recognizable TIE cockpit with some different details that make up the dark bluish gray slopes. A Fig Vonreg can be seated inside. I think the easiest way to get him in is to pull out the whole assembly here and stud him in, then slide everything back into place. By the way, before I forget, these are minifig scale models, so everything you see flashing by the screen in comparison with the two different TIE models I have built, they all scale in the same universe. Right on the top of the cockpit here, you can see I have the printed dish from the Vonreg set 75240. It was kind of just left over, so I used it on the top of the canopy, though an all red dish at the top also looks pretty good here as well. It's really up to you for personal preference on the look. The flatter extension behind the cockpit and arms are reminiscent of the original Vader TIE Advanced from the original film, though here the extension isn't quite as long, and there's a great looking greebly shaped build up in the center. And I should say now, when looking at this back bit, that we are now looking at the weakest handling point of the model. Part of it is your hand just kind of wants to naturally pick it up from this flat area in the back, but it's basically just a flat strip of bricks. So when picking up a model that is a bit heavy, don't count on this flat strip of bricks here to be weight bearing. Get your hand under the cockpit and a thumb on top of the round area at the top, and you're basically just good to go. The cannons at the wingtip contrast well for Vonreg's TIE. They're done in dark bluish gray. And unlike the earlier interceptors, the middle of the forked wings are no longer targeting sensors, but these are in fact variable ordnance launchers that can be loaded to fire a variety of different munitions. And all right, let's now jump back to black. If you're familiar with the Resistance show / First Order ships in general, you probably already know that we don't actually get to see a standard First Order or Special Forces color combo for this TIE Baron style interceptor. So it's basically not canon, though there is a line in the X-Wing card game that somewhat indicates they were probably working on other versions of the Baron Interceptor at some point. But either way, the designer was just observing the natural evolution that we get with a lot of other TIE variants in the universe. So Ace Mox followed the breadcrumbs, so to speak. The standard TIE fighter can get some Special Forces stripes, so can the Interceptor, First Order TIEs, etc. Ace created the standard First Order TIE Baron, which is what we see here. And in my mind, it really should have been the standard look for the TIE Interceptor in Episode 9, and also as a slightly different color combo you can see in digital here. There is a Special Forces striping pattern as well. It's basically done with a few other extra red accents along the arms and some dark red on the inside of the wings. I do think it is interesting that Vonreg's TIE Baron here existed a few years earlier, or most likely a few years earlier, canonically speaking, than the TIE Whisper that we see in Episode 9. It kind of indicates that there were different like design approaches, or maybe just different departments trying to figure out how to advance their TIE line of fighters. And they have two very different solutions. One's sort of a new style, new approach. I feel like they fundamentally changed some of the frame. And this feels like they basically took the old style and just kind of enhanced it or exaggerated certain features. So it's kind of an interesting area of the universe in general. Part of me thinks that the reason why you have two different interceptor designs in the later films is because there was also like a weird bunch of stuff going on with actual production. They have like a different department working on the Resistance show and a different department working on Episode 9. They probably weren't communicating, and who knows, let's just say there was two factions of the First Order that were also working on the Interceptor that weren't communicating. I don't know. I do like, though, that we have a very cool sort of old school interceptor that has been made for the sequel trilogy. And then what I think is I think this is just more of an appropriate advancement of the actual model. These feel like kind of like the cooler, more standard versions of the Interceptor as the evolution of the design moves on in Star Wars. Okay, so none of that stuff was actually in my original script. I was just sort of rambling there at the end. But anyways, if you did want to build either of these creations or the Special Forces color combo, you can get the instructions at our web store. That's BrickVault.toys. If you have any other ideas on new creations for the future, let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much for sticking around to the end of the video. Feel free to like, subscribe, comment, or share, and we'll see you next time at BrickVault.